When people hear the phrase intelligence failure, they often imagine that nobody found anything. Real failures are usually more complicated. Information may have existed, but it was not interpreted correctly. It may not have been shared in time. The assessment may have remained too vague to trigger action, or a decision process may have absorbed the warning without changing course. We will use 4 widely discussed cases to study recurring mechanisms: warning fragments, information silos, confirmation bias, and model lock-in. The point is not to deliver a one-line verdict on complex history. The point is to build habits that expose weaknesses in our own OSINT work.
Intelligence failure rarely comes from one bad person, one missed document, or one broken tool. It is often a chain of smaller weaknesses that become dangerous when they overlap. A warning may be too vague to support action. 2 teams may hold connected clues without a common identifier or sharing process. A fragile source may enter an analysis already shaped by confirmation bias. Pressure can make uncertain language disappear. An old model can make new anomalies look normal. We also need to control hindsight. After an event, the path through the clues looks much cleaner than it did beforehand. Historical lessons matter, but we should not pretend that past uncertainty was simple.
Pearl Harbor is often used to show the difference between having warning fragments and knowing the target and timing of an attack. There were diplomatic tensions, military movements, and communications anomalies. But those clues did not all carry the same reliability, timing, or meaning. Danger is rising. This is the likely target, and this is the likely time, are 3 different levels of confidence. One central challenge was turning dispersed signals into a warning clear enough and timely enough to guide action. The OSINT lesson is not that every anomaly predicts an event. It is that analysts must state exactly how far the evidence has moved from general concern toward a specific warning.
In public source work, the sentence, "risk is rising," is still incomplete. Risk to whom? During what time window? Based on which signal combination? What should the reader do now? Imagine monitoring a supplier. Project delays, senior departures, and customer complaints begin to cluster. Put them on a timeline. Are they becoming more frequent? Are they concentrated in the same business line? Are several source types moving together? Define trigger conditions in advance. If a major lawsuit, a key customer departure, and a liquidity warning appear together, the case may require escalation. If the trigger is not reached, keep the information gaps visible rather than hiding the uncertainty. Public investigations after 9/11 described a familiar problem. Different organizations held clues about connected people and activities, but the pieces did not become a shared picture in time. This was not only a matter of forwarding documents. Access boundaries, identifier differences, process friction, competing priorities, and the way individual clues were evaluated all mattered. A travel record, training activity, or person-to-person link may look weak alone and become significant when combined. Information silos are dangerous because each team can honestly believe its clue is not strong enough to escalate, while no one sees the risk created by the combination. In the OSINT team, sharing a URL is not the same as sharing intelligence. The next analyst needs the source, capture time, person or entity identifier, reason for the link, and confidence level. Names have different spellings. Phone numbers use different formats. Accounts change handles. Without normalization, one person may become several records, or 2 different people may be merged. Every line on a link chart should retain its basis. Is it an official employment relationship, a shared contact detail, or simply co-appearance in one photograph? Important anomalies should also receive peer review, with room for another analyst to offer a different explanation. The Iraq WMD assessments show how source quality and narrative pressure can interact. Public reviews identified serious problems in parts of the source base, reporting chains, and verification. One original claim could appear in several reports, creating the impression of multiple confirmations, even when the chain led back to a single origin. Once an organization leans toward a conclusion, supporting material becomes easier to notice and conflicting material easier to explain away. Policy and organizational pressure can also remove the words possible, uncertain, and not independently verified, leaving a narrative that sounds much stronger than the underlying evidence. If 5 articles repeat the same claim, do not write 5 sources until you trace the citations. 4 may quote the first article, and the first may rely on one anonymous second-hand account. Build a source lineage for critical judgments. Ask who observed the event, who handled the document, and who merely repeated someone else. Score proximity, reliability, and verifiability separately. Then search for the evidence most likely to overturn your current judgment. Strong search skills can make confirmation bias worse if every query is designed to support the answer you already prefer. In the report, separate facts, inferences, judgments, and limits so certainty does not increase during editing.
Public analysis of the October 7, 2023 attack continues, and many details about responsibility and information states require careful sourcing. We will focus on one analytic issue: how an established model can absorb anomalies. When an organization has relied on a stable assumption for a long time, unusual training, border activity, or public statements may be interpreted as signaling, routine activity, or manageable noise. Technical collection can provide more data, but it does not automatically ask whether the underlying assumption has expired. This is also why we must separate confirmed facts, unresolved reporting, and post-event interpretation. Public debate is not the same as settled evidence.
The assumption most worth testing is often the one nobody in the team thinks needs discussion. Write it down. For example, the other side does not intend to escalate in the near term. The company will not abandon its core market. This account has always been controlled by the same person. Give the assumption observable indicators and contrary indicators. Ask, if this assumption is wrong, what should we expect to see in public information? Then let another analyst apply a different explanation to the same evidence. Critical assumptions need event-triggered and scheduled review, not one-time approval.
The 4 cases are very different, but similar analytic breakpoints appear. Pearl Harbor highlights the conversion of warning fragments into actionable warning. 9/11 highlights cross-organizational sharing and connection. Iraq WMD highlights source weakness, confirmation bias, and amplified certainty. Public discussion of October 7 highlights model and assumption review. Do not turn this into a mechanical one-case, one-cause chart. Real failures can combine weak sources, slow sharing, old assumptions, and overconfident writing. The comparison is useful because it helps us see where several risks may be present in the same project.
Historical review has a difficult trap. Once we know the outcome, the mind turns scattered clues into a smooth story. Every clue seems to point in one direction, and the obvious question becomes, how did anyone miss this? The analyst at the time did not see that polished path. They saw noisy information of uneven quality, with several plausible explanations competing for attention. If a company later collapses, a hiring decline 6 months earlier looks like a clear warning. At the time, the same decline might have reflected seasonality, outsourcing, a hiring platform change, or a normal reorganization. A fair review separates the timeline. On the left, keep only the evidence available then, with its original quality, deadline, and confidence. On the right, add facts learned later. We can then distinguish avoidable process errors from reasonable uncertainty and from questions that public information could not have resolved at that moment. This is why old assessments should not be overwritten. Preserve the original judgment, confidence, evidence list, and revision history. Without that record, review becomes an exercise in grading yesterday with today's answer key.
Move these failure mechanisms into a company risk investigation, and they become very familiar. Suppose hiring has declined for several months. That is a warning fragment, not proof of business deterioration. If legal staff keep litigation in one system, researchers track hiring in another, and executive departures sit in a separate spreadsheet, the clues remain isolated. Each may look weak alone. Together on one timeline, they may change the risk picture. Now add decision pressure. A business team wants the partnership to proceed, so negative evidence is described as temporary. The company has looked stable for years, so each new anomaly is absorbed into the old model.
Nobody needs to fabricate evidence. Several small acts of discounting can produce the same result. The repair is concrete. Combine the evidence on one timeline. Keep at least two competing explanations. Set escalation thresholds before the result is known, and record dissent. A rule such as several independent source types deteriorate and move beyond the 12-month baseline is more disciplined than reacting to one bad headline or explaining every anomaly away.
No checklist can guarantee that an assessment will be correct. A good process can make error visible earlier and make revision easier. For every major judgment, record at least one counterindicator and one alternative explanation. List the sources, time periods, and verification steps you have not covered. Trace repeated reporting back to original sources. Send major judgments to someone who did not produce the first analysis. Most importantly, define what new evidence would raise, lower, or overturn your confidence. A judgment designed to be updated is more professional than one designed to look certain forever.
This failure risk checklist works for online claim verification, monitoring, and company risk research. Begin with the claim, the decision user, and the deadline. Then walk through the chain. Is collection incomplete? Does a major conclusion depend on one origin? Did a handoff lose context? Is the analysis looking only for support? Is there a clear action threshold? For each risk, record the current indicator, possible consequence, repair action, and owner. Add one final field. What new evidence would change the present judgment? That makes a later review much more useful than simply saying the team was wrong.
Choose a recent online claim and map the work across 5 stages. Collect, interpret, share, judge, and act. Mark the 2 places most likely to break. What specific control could expose each problem earlier? Now check for hindsight. Does a clue look obvious only because you already know what happened? What normal information would have competed for attention at the time? The lesson is not to ask, how could they fail to see it? The useful question is, where did the chain break, and how would we detect that break in our own work? Next we turn to Sherman Kent and the tension between professional judgment and service to decision makers.